Welcome to Newsoft's Medical Practice Management podcast series. I'm Lindsay Coates. The complexities of revenue cycle management run deep, but not being educated on them could cost your practice tens of thousands of dollars each year. Here to cover some of the major wasted revenue opportunities in your workflow system is Kara Buckhalter. Welcome, Kara.
Hi, Lindsay.
Hello. So, Kara, many practices are losing revenue and don't even know it. Can you explain what's going on here and how this is happening?
Sure. The revenue cycle encompasses many steps that begin when a patient first makes their appointment until the point when there is no longer a balance on that patient's account. A successful practice works as a cohesive unit. That includes the front office staff, the billing and coding staff, the providers, and even management. And it's important that each department have policies and procedures in place and that those staff members are trained into the most efficient ways to implement those policies. The extent to which your practice has a handle on implementing these policies directly affects the amount that you're paid and how quickly you're paid. It's also important to perform internal audits to identify places of lost revenue. These areas of lost revenue are known as black holes in the medical practice. For example, a successful office will implement a policy that all copays and deductibles are to be collected at the time of visit. They will train their front office staff on verifying the patient's eligibility and getting their benefits, and then collecting any copays or deductibles that are due when the patient has arrived for their appointment. A breakdown in this policy can cause a lot of extra overhead costs for the practice when they then have to have a billing staff member come in later and send statements to the patient and try to track down that money for copays or deductibles that wasn't paid at the time of service.
Okay, so I'm an office manager. We start the day, the patient checks in, sees the doctor, leaves. Where's the first place that I should start looking for these black holes or the missing revenue?
I recommend to practices that they start evaluating the front office policies and procedure, which is where the revenue cycle actually begins. It's imperative that complete and accurate information is obtained from the patient and that the front office staff puts that information correctly into the practice management software. I then recommend that they just follow the flow of data. So then they would follow the steps that naturally occur in their practice and evaluate the steps that the practitioners or physicians take to ensure that charges are accurately being captured and that all possible billing is actually being done. Many successful practices will have a coder or a biller actually shadow their physicians just to look for coding compliance issues and also to look for any of that potential lost revenue. Billers often find that physicians are undercoding. They generally lack a true understanding of E&M coding. Some physicians try to actually play it safe because they're afraid of being audited by an insurance company. So they will downcode their actual visits. And we find this a lot in the E&M or evaluation and management coding. The physician thinks that they're downcoding and that they'll be safe, when actually the insurance company does know that you are downcoding those visits. They do have benchmarks in place that they evaluate. National studies have actually found that physicians lose up to 9% of the revenue they should be receiving just due to undercoding. An example of this is an internal medicine practice or provider in the state of Kansas. If that physician with a Medicare patient just twice a week codes an evaluation and management visit as a level 3, a 99213, when it's actually a level 4 that was performed, a 99214, they lose $32.16 on each of those visits. So just doing this twice a week on a Medicare patient will cause that practice to lose approximately $3,000 a year.
Is there one area of the practice workflow that's most often overlooked?
This can vary from practice to practice. Many practices will overlook the importance of getting the patient's insurance eligibility and confirming their benefits prior to submitting a claim. I've seen countless offices that have claims denied because the patient wasn't eligible for insurance coverage on the date of visit. I've also seen offices that do not collect copays and deductibles at the time of visit. And as a matter of fact, the Medical Group Management Administration did a survey on this and found that approximately 60% of the amount owed by patients is never collected.
Okay, so what are some best practices that we can get into to start maximizing revenue?
It's important to set standard policies for each department and then routinely audit those policies and ensure that they are being followed. A breakdown in the policies that isn't caught for several months can cause a negative impact in the revenue cycle. It's also important to get into the habit of auditing your accounts receivable by payer, so you can identify any underpayments or any denials that need to be appealed within the timely filing limit based on that particular payer. I also recommend that your accounts receivable is analyzed by CPT code. That way you can identify the procedures in your practice that are the most profitable, as well as those that may be underperforming.
Is this something that all the staff needs to be trained to look for, or should we be leaving this to the trained eye of a professional biller or coder?
The entire staff should be trained to work together to identify any inefficiencies in the workflow. They should also be encouraged to offer suggestions for things that they think would help improve the workflow and the revenue. When you're talking about analyzing the accounts receivable by payers or CPT codes, this is often best left to a certified biller or coder because they have expertise in these areas.
So what role does technology play in revenue cycle management?
Technology plays an important role as a partner of the practice in their revenue cycle management. For instance, technology has now advanced to the point where we can actually check the patient's eligibility with their insurance and get their benefits with a simple click of a button. Technology also has really advanced in electronic claim submission, being linked with the clearinghouse electronic claims logs and the electronic remittance advice, or ERA. Now when we submit a claim electronically, if our claim for some reason is denied or not paid properly, we find that out in a matter of days rather than a matter of weeks or even months, which used to be the case when we were having to submit claims on paper and wait for a paper EOB. Claim scrubbers are also an important tool in technology. Claim scrubbers allow us to actually scrub the claim and look for any inconsistencies in the coding. We're then able to correct those claims and get them back out to the insurance company that day and have them submitted as a clean claim. We also have electronic claim status checks, where we used to have to employ billers who would sit on the phone and call insurance companies just to check the status of our claims. Now, if we don't receive a payment in 2-3 weeks, we can actually click a button to find out what the status is of that claim at the insurance company. We can then easily make any adjustments to the claim, corrections, and send it back out electronically. Finally, with technology, our reporting has become so much more robust and enables us to spend less time and get more information. We're able to filter our data, such as the payer reports that I spoke of earlier, and also to filter our accounts receivable by CPT codes. So we can actually really go through those reports and find out where revenue is being lost and what payers are performing the best, and it really gives us a better idea of what's happening with the revenue cycle in our practice.
Okay, so what other questions should we be asking ourselves? How else can we be optimizing our revenue cycle?
It's not uncommon to find a practice owner or a manager who simply does not have the time or resources to thoroughly evaluate their practice and look for any of these black holes or lost revenue. I recommend that you step back and ask yourself if you have the people in place and the technology in place that all work together to make a successful practice. If you find that you don't or that there may be issues, it's time to bring in an outside source to give you a thorough evaluation of your revenue cycle and your practice management to find out if you need additional help or possibly should look into outsourcing.
So bring in the big guns if you feel like there is a problem, just so you can make sure you're not missing out on that revenue.
Definitely. It will always pay to bring in a professional and have them thoroughly evaluate what's happening in your practice. You may not have an idea that you are losing money on a certain procedure or that your provider is undercoding the majority of the time. And a specialist or a certified coder or biller can tell you this, and then you can make adjustments to your practice and your workflow so you can optimize your revenue.
That all makes sense, and I appreciate it, Kara. Thank you for talking with us today.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Well, I'd like to invite all of our listeners to tune into our previous podcast on ROI-based practice analysis, and this might help you get some tips on how to shore up your practice's bottom line. Thanks a lot, and join us next month.